Hi, Shabbat Tov. B'ezrat Hashem, this week we'll be continuing with Beis HaLevi and Bitachon. Last week, on Thursday, we've learned that Beis HaLevi was speaking about fear of another human being, of flesh and blood, and he said that that fear is a result of forgetting Hashem, at least to some extent. And he said that when one finds himself in a difficult situation, one should strengthen himself and remind himself that he is in Hashem's arms and Hashem is protecting him. Of course, we should use our common sense and not put ourselves in difficult situations. We have a mitzvah, v'sharta me'od nafshosechem. It's actually the only mitzvah that we are commanded with the word me'od very much. We should look after ourselves, me'od, and not put ourselves into sakana. But when one does find himself in a danger, in a difficult situation, or any problem, we should strengthen ourselves and remind ourselves that Hashem is with us and strengthen our Bitachon. And Bechlal, on a regular basis, as he mentioned, Rabbi Yosef Sagis would hum to himself the words of encouragement and psukim with words of that would strengthen his bitachon and remind him of Hashem and His presence in his life. So now we're moving to chapter 5, where Beis HaLevi says that there are times when a person suffers at the hand of someone else. So he explains what one's attitude should be in such a circumstance. When someone finds himself threatened by another person, his instinct is to focus his effort on dealing with that person. But one who lives with Bitachon understands that those who threaten him are nothing more than a stick in the hand of Hashem. Nobody has the power to harm us in any way unless Hashem determines that we should suffer that harm. And therefore, if somebody is causing us harm, our primary response should focus not on that person, but rather on Hashem, to whom we should pray and ask for assistance and try to figure out what is the reason for all that. When somebody beats his fellow with his stick, the victim will not plead with the stick to stop hitting him, but will turn to the person wielding the stick. Similarly, we should not direct our efforts toward the person who causes us harm, as he is just a stick. We should instead direct our attention toward Hashem and plead to Him for help. Nevertheless, a person who harmed another is fully responsible and is held accountable for his actions. So he writes, even at a time when one person is harmfully dominated over by another, Chas v'shalom, the person who was harmed should understand that everything is from Hashem, may He be blessed, and the man who harmed him is merely the rod with which Hashem punishes those who are liable. We learn quite a few examples of that, and we can learn from Torah. The Gemara in Megillah 16a elaborates on the moment in Megillah Esther when Esther informed Achashverosh that her nation was threatened by Haman's decree to annihilate the Jews. Esther first explained that her nation was threatened, and Achashverosh then asked her to identify the person who dared to destroy them. The verse tells us that she pointed to Haman and said, "This evil man, Haman." Surprisingly, the Gemara derives from the wording of the verse that Esther was about to point to Achashverosh himself, for he too sought to destroy the Jewish people. But just then, the Malach moved Esther's finger towards Haman. We see that when she was going to Achashverosh, to the king, and was speaking to the king, we know that whenever it says in the Megillah Esther king, when it refers to Ribono Shel Olam. So she had her focus on the king, and she was praying to Hashem, explaining her request. And then, as if she heard the voice from Shamayim, who is that person? So she wanted to point to him, to Achashverosh. But at that moment, the Malach moved her finger to Haman. So in this story, we see that Esther's goal was to petition the king to interfere. Like, it doesn't make any sense that she would do that, right? Because she comes to Ahasuerus and she is asking the king to intervene and save the Jews. How could she at that moment mean to blame Ahasuerus for the decree? So Vilna Gaon explains that when righteous people would speak to kings or other people of influence, they recognized with perfect clarity that their fate ultimately depended only on Hashem. Even as they spoke to the king, in their minds, they were speaking to Hashem. Therefore, as Esther spoke to Ahasuerus, her mind was so focused on Hashem that she instinctively pointed to Ahasuerus as the wicked person who sought to destroy the Jewish people. That's how clear it was to her that only Hashem controlled her fate and the fate of the Jewish people. We also learn from the situation where before their first visit to the palace of Pharaoh, Hashem told Moshe and Aaron that they should perform a miracle. Aaron was to take his staff and cast it down before the king, and it would turn into a snake. And this is exactly what he did. Upon seeing this, Pharaoh commanded his magician to do the same, which they did. After all the snakes became staffs again, Hashem performed another miracle, and Aaron's staff swallowed up the other staffs. The Chasam Sofer in Shabbos 97a explains that Hashem was actually teaching Pharaoh an incredible lesson. The king was haughty and arrogant. He felt that as if he was the one who was enslaving and afflicting the Jewish people. He did not understand that he was merely a staff in the hand of Hashem. Therefore, Hashem first turned the snakes back into staffs, and only then did Aaron's staff swallow them. The message to Pharaoh was, "You are not the mighty poisonous snake you think yourself to be. You are nothing more than a staff in the hand of Hashem." We learn it also from David HaMelech. When David was fleeing from his rebellious son Avshalom, he was cursed by Shimei ben Gera. Instead of punishing Shimei for his act, David said, Hashem told him to curse. It says in Shmuel 2:16-10. Did Hashem actually tell Shimei to curse David? The Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya in Igros Kodesh 25 explains that David understood that if Shimei cursed him, it was Hashem who gave Shimei that inspiration. And it was Hashem who was giving Shimei the ability to utter the curse. David therefore perceived Shimei's curse as if Hashem had actually told him to do so. It says that our sages teach in Sota 49b that one of the tragedies that will occur during the pre-Messianic era is that the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. Chofetz Chaim in Kovetz Memoriam, Volume 1, page 301, explains that in the name of Reb Yitzchak of Volozhin, that if one throws a stone at a dog, it will pounce on the stone to bite it. The dog does not understand that it was not the stone that hit him, but rather the person who threw the stone. Similarly, during the pre-Messianic era, people will be lacking in the emunah, blaming various causes for their distress, failing to understand that all comes from Hashem. There is also a beautiful example we learn from Yosef. There are 3 times in the Torah that describes Pharaoh's dreams. First is when he has the dreams in Bereshit 41, 1 through 7. Second is when he recounts them to Yosef. And then when Yosef interprets them. And there are nuanced differences between these accounts. One change is that Paro tells Yosef that the 7 weak cows were Dallas, scrawny, in Posuk 19. Although they are not described this way when Paro actually had the dream. Why did Paro add this description to the weak cows? The Beis HaLevi in Beis HaLevi Ala Torah on Bereshit 41:3 explains that before Yosef began to interpret Paro's dreams, he told him that he cannot interpret dreams on his own. Rather, it will be Hashem who grants him this ability to do so. It's in Posuk 16. Paro wanted to test Yosef to see if he was really truthful about the statement. And therefore, he fabricated an extra detail to mislead Yosef. Yosef recognized that this description did not apply to the actual dream. And therefore, in interpreting the dream, he does not address even that fact that the cows were Dallas. All Paro's wise men interpreted the dream, but they were so incorrect that even Paro recognized that they were false. It says in Rashi, verse 8. Only Yosef interpreted the dream differently than the others, and he knew to interpret it that way, of how to do it, from the word Dallas, the very word Paro added, because Dallas refers to wheat, as we learn from Baba Metzia 59. But how could he base his interpretation on the detail that was not part of the dream, but was fabricated by Paro? Beis HaLevi explains that Yosef understood that everything Hashem does has a purpose, and Paro is just a tool in the hand of Hashem. If the effort to mislead him is from Hashem, there is a message to him in the added detail. So Beis HaLevi concludes, this lesson should teach everyone how much we must rely on Hashem. And even when somebody wants to do evil to a person, he should understand that this is also from Hashem, and only for his ultimate good. Thank you for joining. I wish you all a good gebenched week.